AI is playing a critical and transformative role in risk management. Today's podcast highlights how AI is revolutionizing this space by automating repetitive tasks, enhancing predictive analytics, and empowering decision makers with tools like generative AI assistants tailored to organizational needs. Today's guest, Patricio Pazmiño, Director of Analytics and AI at Kin Analytics, shares practical insights on starting AI adoption and overcoming challenges like data infrastructure to build a reliable and effective AI tool. But before we begin, let's take a moment to hear from today's podcast sponsor, Kin Analytics.
In the fast-paced world of lending and equipment leasing, staying ahead means making smarter, data-driven decisions. Kin Analytics empowers businesses with advanced automation, tailored credit scoring models, and risk management strategies to minimize risk, streamline processes, and boost efficiency. Whether exploring new markets or optimizing portfolios, we're your partner for intelligent, impactful growth. Ready to unlock your business's full potential with AI-driven insights? Let's make it happen.
And welcome, everyone. I am Bri Wilson with The Monitor, joined today by Patricio Pazmiño of Kin Analytics. Patricio, can you take a few moments to introduce yourself and your company?
Sure. Hi, Bri. Thanks for having me. I'm extremely happy to be here with you. For everyone out there listening to this podcast, my name is Patricio. I'm the Director of Analytics and AI at Kin Analytics. We are an AI and data analytics consultancy firm that specializes in the human finance industry.
Great. So, Patricio, you recently wrote an article titled The Role of Credit Risk Managers in the Era of AI and Data, in which you discuss how game-changing AI and adequate data can be for risk managers. What inspired you to write this article?
Sure. So I think right now we're living in the era of data and AI. And one of the biggest concerns people have is how these technologies will affect their jobs, or how should their jobs evolve to adapt to these new technologies. And that question has crossed my mind several times in the context of my own role and job, right? I'm sure it has crossed the mind of all our colleagues in the industry. But I think within our industry, this question is especially relevant for risk managers, from credit analysts all the way to CROs. Why? First, because their jobs revolve around data. Managing credit and risks requires, right, making sense of data so that you can manage risk, right? And second, because we're in the lending space, and I think lending is all about managing risk. So their jobs is specifically relevant to our industry. So I thought it was important to kind of brainstorm and explore some ideas around how the role of risk managers should be redefined in this area of AI and data.
Absolutely. And how is AI transforming risk management today? What are some common tasks that AI can help streamline or automate? And what are the other key benefits of AI?
Risk management requires a lot of strategy and high skill management, but it's also full of manual and repetitive tasks, right? So risk managers find themselves, making a lot of manual work that could be easily automated. So I think one of the main ways AI is helping risk managers today is by automating those tasks and streamlining the processes that up to this point have remained mainly inefficient. So I would say just giving them back time to really focus on the things that matter within their roles. If you want, I can give a few of kind of general concrete examples. But for example, in the context of credit analysts, I've worked all of this year with a lot of credit people and credit analysts. Even though their role says credit analysts, most of the times what they do is actually being data validators. So they have little time to actually assess the risk of deals and customers and assets, and they focus a lot of their time in just validating data. So I think AI and data analytics as a whole allows you to automate all of those tasks, right? And give you back time to really focus on assessing the risk of customers. And if we talk about credit managers or more high-level management like CROs, I think a really nice use case of AI related to generative AI is this concept of having your own AI assistant, right? So imagine kind of having your own ChatGPT, which is tailored to your company, your needs, your data, and you can ask this assistant any question you want, right? So instead of having, a whole team of people and dashboards that are kind of a bit static and that may require time to really provide the things you need, you can have this These assistants, right, it could cover specific tasks and could allow you to have immediate access to the whole information within your organization really easily, efficiently.
See. So, can you share some examples of AI-driven tools or technologies that are currently used by credit managers and CROs?
Of course, and maybe the best way to answer this is if we kind of break down the typical credit assessment process or underwriting process. So as you may be aware, the first step always starts with the credit team receiving an application, a credit application. This is typically done through email. They receive like a hard copy, documentation, PDFs, scans, photos, whatever, and they have to process that. And the way they do that is typically very manual. So they are skimming through the documents, identifying the relevant fields, manually inputting those fields into their systems so they can later perform the analysis. Everything that I have described could be easily automated through AI, specifically through some technologies called OCR, optical character recognition, computer vision, which is these AI models understanding hard copy documentation like photos, scans, PDFs, and identifying the fields that are relevant for you and just helping you automate that process. Once the application has been inputted into the system, it gets to the credit team, and now the credit team needs to perform the analysis. And there we can have a really well-known example of AI, which is predictive analytics, more specifically machine learning. So having these AI machine learning models that are centralizing all the data, analyzing the data, and providing you a recommendation on what to do with that specific deal, right? If you should approve it, you should decline it. So just giving that predictive capability to support your task as a credit analyst. And the other example that I can mention, and it's related to these AI assistants that I was mentioning before, but I work a lot with risk managers, with CROs, and they constantly find themselves needing information immediately. They want reports, they want graphs, they want updated live KPIs of their business. What's the application volume? What's the approval rate? How is the portfolio performing, right? So typically this is done through very static reports that they get at most once every week, right? But there's not much capability of adjusting those reports. So again, kind of an AI assistant could allow you to access your company's information immediately, create custom graphs, up-to-date metrics, just to help you make better decisions, manage your business better.
Yeah, that's great. And can you discuss the accuracy of the currently available tools? How important is it for credit managers to understand how an AI model arrived at a decision?
Some predictive tools, like the ones I mentioned, like machine learning for credit scoring, so for predicting probability of default, losses, those tools have been around for a long time, like a couple of decades, right? So there have been a lot of advancements, especially recently. So they are very reliable tools. So not much concern in terms of their accuracy. Some years ago, though, there were some concern in terms of transparency and explainability because they were seen as black box, right? They were making predictions, giving you recommendations, but you really didn't know how they got to that decision. It was a black box. But there's a new trend that is gaining a lot of force, let's say, that is explainable AI. So kind of understanding that a lot of business managers, apart from having this accuracy and performance, they also want explainability, especially when you are predicting things and when you are making decisions on deals. So right now there's a lot of tools, and I'm sure there's going to be more in the short term, that are allowing managers to understand the reasoning behind the decision of the model. So kind of opening these black boxes. So I think in terms of predictive analytics, that's pretty well covered, and these are tools that I would recommend any lending institution could be implemented right away without any downside, I would say. Then if we get into the other aspect, let's say more, remember I was mentioning the OCR, the computer vision kind of stuff, kind of making sense out of videos, pictures, scans, PDFs. Those are also tools that have been around for quite some time now, and they're also pretty accurate, pretty reliable. And they also typically cover parts of your process that are also a bit less, I don't want to say important, but that is just automating specific tasks, right? So I would also recommend that's kind of a great way to start with AI, using these computer vision tools to automate your document processing. Okay. And then as a third, if we are talking about generative AI, so more like the ChatGPTs, right? Kind of these natural language processing tools that you talk to or text and receive answers. They are great. I think they have huge capabilities and potential, but I would say those are the less reliable at the moment, just because they're so new, right? But there's also a lot of improvements and advancements being delivered and launched every week. So I'm sure in the short term they will become as reliable as the previous tools I mentioned.
Absolutely. And can you share some real-world examples of organizations that have successfully used AI in risk management? What were the measurable outcomes or improvements as a result of the AI adoption?
So within the human finance industry, we have, as a company, deployed a lot of solutions that are related to predictive analytics. So using AI and machine learning to predict things like if a customer is going to default. I can tell you that these solutions have allowed our customers to reduce their default rates in around 20% and increase their approval rates in 30%. So really identify those great customers that maybe they were not seeing before, and also prevent them from doing these really bad deals that were generating a lot of losses. So it's kind of a win-win situation, right? It's having less risk, but also doing more business. And then the other part of these tools, like a big benefit, is also efficiency. So typically when we talk about models and predictive models, we focus on the losses, reducing risk. But it's also important to mention that these tools also add a lot of efficiency because you are preventing your team from doing all these manual tasks that I was talking about before, from going to the sources and manually collecting reports to analyzing the reports, validating data. These models, these credit scoring systems are doing this for you. So we've seen with some of our customers that from onboarding a deal to getting to a decision, time is typically reduced between 50 to 60%, which is a huge benefit, right? And in some cases, especially with customers who are with the objective of getting to auto decisioning, these tools allow you to get to auto decisioning. So we can talk about decisions that before were taking a couple of days to be made, reduce that to seconds, right? When you have this segment of customers where you do the completely like no touch approach of having the systems validate everything, make the recommendation, and send the approval or decline. So yeah.
Great. And specifically for credit managers and CROs who are new to AI, where should they start in implementing AI solutions? Are there specific AI tools or platforms that are particularly user-friendly for non-technical professionals?
For sure, great question. Where to start, right? And I think it's key for business owners and managers to really focus on the problem and not the solution, to really understand where are the pain points of their business, and that's where their priorities should be set. But in the context of risk management and chief risk officers, most of their job revolves around originating deals and managing portfolios. So I would start there, of course, because I'm sure as a lending institution, that's where your core business is at. So that's where you would get the main benefit. So first, my recommendation would be, if you are a CRO, a risk manager working on the lending institution that hasn't yet to implement any sort of predictive analytics, credit scoring for the origination side, I'll definitely recommend that to be your starting point. Even if you want to start with a more simple model, more traditional, and then evolve your capabilities to a more like machine learning model, but you should definitely start leveraging analytics there in the origination side, supporting your credit team with decisions. And then around credit scoring, this allows you to automate the other parts of the process. So as I was mentioning, processing, know your business checks, fraud checks, the documentation, and sending those approvals and decline letters. So if you already have a credit scoring model, it's a lot easier to start using AI to automate the other process that complement the underwriting process. So I would say just in general, just automating those manual tasks. And then I think another big priority we have identified is portfolio management. So the same way that in the origination side, you can use analytics to predict and make better decisions, you can use data and AI to predict and better manage your portfolio. So anticipate which customers are going to get into default and maybe do some proactive collections right there, right? So again, try to minimize your losses and better manage your portfolio. And also maybe a bit less impactful from a business perspective, but I think very impactful from a personal perspective is just I would recommend any manager, any person really, right, to really try to get involved with tools that are available to us immediately, like ChatGPT, right? These are amazing tools. So the more you get familiar with these tools, the more you leverage them, I'm sure that the greater impact they will have in your business, in your job. But I do wanna mention something there. Be really careful in what information you provide to these tools, right? They are connected to the internet. They're public tools, so I wouldn't recommend you using, for example, ChatGPT with your proprietary data from your company, because there are assistants out there that can help you make data analysis, right? But I wouldn't use the proprietary data of my company with these really like public generic tools. If you want to go through that path, there's an alternative, the one I was mentioning, of creating your own version of ChatGPT, your own assistant that could be done in a secure infrastructure, right, with all the securities and measures in place. And basically, it meets the same purpose of having a chat and assistant that helps you, but in a secure environment.
Absolutely. And in general, what are some of the biggest challenges in implementing AI tools, and how can leaders overcome them?
That's a great question as well. I think the main challenge, I would say, is data as a whole and infrastructure around data, because as you know, everything we've been talking about, any AI tool, any AI application revolves around data. They need data, and they can be as good as your data is. So I would really think that that's the main challenge. There are a lot of companies within our industry that have not invested enough in having their data architecture really well designed so they can eventually implement this type of tool. So if you're a business owner, a company who has yet to invest in that aspect, I would really recommend that you start there, that you kind of really clean and design a really nice infrastructure and architecture that allows you to in the future implement any sort of data applications. And related to this, my recommendation is treat data like it's like gold, because data is really gold for companies. It's the most valuable asset a company has. So even if right now you're not in the position of already adopting these technologies and it's something more for further down the line, I would say do not hesitate, do not like doubting to investing right now, at least in your infrastructure, even if it's like a more of a future investment in terms of AI, but really make sure that right now you have all the tools in place. My second recommendation is moving to the cloud. Cloud services are the core of technological advancements nowadays. The sooner you move to cloud-based solution, the better prepared you will be for adopting data-driven solutions and AI-driven solutions. So I would definitely recommend that. Then another big challenge that we have seen within our customers and in the industry is lack of expertise, right? So we're dealing with lending companies. Their core business is lending money, is managing risk, is not technology. So even though they might have some small technological teams in-house, they're typically more focused on the software development and supporting systems and IT, but not necessarily on having a specific expertise on data or AI or how AI fits with the whole IT infrastructure, right? So I would also really recommend that you start investing in your internal capabilities, whether that's hiring an internal team and developing this team, or looking for outside help, right? External companies, consultancies, development shops out there that could really help you outline your strategy and eventually even bring these solutions to life. And then, like a third challenge that I've seen is investing in the wrong areas. So there's a lot of, I see it as an overhype around AI at the moment. So everyone wants to invest in AI, but they again focus on the solution and not in the problem. So they end up buying like a solution or developing a project that doesn't end up giving the value they expected, the return on investment they expected. And it's again because you're focusing on the solution, not the problem. So I would really recommend people who are listening to this podcast, right, and are thinking about implementing AI in their companies to listen to your two types of customers that you have. The first type of customer, and probably the most important one, your internal customer, which are your employees, right? Your employees are in the front line. They are dealing with the daily challenges of your business, and they know the pain points. They know what things are not working. They know where the deficiencies are. So they could be a great source of feedback and information for where to prioritize and start making these investments in data and AI. And the other, of course, your external customers, whether that's a broker, a vendor, end user like a borrower, they could also provide like really valuable feedback of how they see your company's process. How was the communication, right? How was the onboarding and all the process from the moment they applied to the moment they received the credit, and also post-credit support. So I would also encourage equipment finance companies to find spaces where they can go and directly ask their end customers what they think about the process. And that could also be a great way of identifying opportunities for then making the assessment of whether AI is a good tool to solve those or not, right? There may be some other solutions out there.
Absolutely. So, what advice would you give to credit managers and CROs who want to stay ahead of the curve in terms of AI adoption and innovation? How should they prioritize investments in AI and technology to maximize return on income?
Sure. So in line to what I was saying before, my recommendation would be to prioritize their investments. So again, for them to get obsessed over the problem and not the solution, make sure they are identifying the relevant pain points they want to solve before they even think about the technology that is going to solve those problems. So once you have identified the pain point, then you can make the decision of whether it's AI or any other technology out there that it's the best to solve those problems. And I'm sure they're gonna find that many of the problems they currently have that are super important and urgent may even be solved by some more easier technologies or solutions, right? The other thing that I would advise is to have the right people to guide you and support you through this process. If you are a CEO, a CRO of a company, you have a lot on your table, right? You have to manage the business. And I don't think anyone is expecting you to be an IT expert, an AI expert, right? So you should surround yourselves with people who are experts in those fields and can provide you the support. So you're bringing the business knowledge, you're bringing the identification of pain points, and then these people can support you in finding the right technology to solve those problems. And then another advice to maybe stay ahead of the curve, I would say that it's important that you understand as a CRO, as a chief risk officer, or another C-level person within your company, you have high exposure and influence in your organization. So I do think you have a big opportunity to be a promoter of these transformations and technologies. Yeah, so I think, yeah, that should be part of your role. I think within that aspect, it's super important that you are familiarized with these technologies. And again, with this, I don't mean that you become an AI expert, that you pursue a major in computer science. No. I'm just saying, just get familiarized with these tools, with their capabilities, with their pros and cons. And I'm sure it's going to be a lot easier for you as a CRO or C-level manager to bridge the gap between your business needs and the technological aspect. And I'm sure it's going to be super beneficial for your company.
Absolutely. So you mentioned earlier that one problem that leaders run into sometimes, maybe often, is that they invest in the wrong things. So what can leaders do to ensure that the implementation of these tools does not fail, or to maybe get ahead of a tool that is on the path of failure?
Yeah, that's another great question. Two things come to mind. So the first one is understanding that implementing a solution, for example, an AI tool, predictive model, whatever, it's not the end, it's the start of your journey, right? Getting to a model implementation is a quite important milestone, but that's just the start of the journey. You now have to manage, maintain, monitor these tools. These should be seen as live tools. They are alive, right? And you as a business manager that have all the know-how on your company and your industry, you should make sure that these tools are aligned and performing as you would expect. And as part of these post-implementation efforts, it's also very important to make sure that your company, everyone is on board with these transformations, because there are countless stories of technological changes that have failed to produce value, not because they were incorrect or they were wrongly built, right? They were right, but it's also because companies, as organizations, were not prepared to adopt those technologies. So maybe more going into the field of like change management, right? It's not only important to have these amazing tools implemented, but also have your team on board into adopting and really using these tools, right? So you shouldn't force them to use them. They should see the value themselves and then wanting to use these tools. So yeah, I think that's important.
Absolutely. And what kinds of data sources are most valuable for AI-driven risk models?
Um, Good question, but also kind of a tricky question, because it would also depend on what is your objective, right? Depending on what's the use case of your solution, some data sources might become more relevant than others. But my recommendation in general is that don't underestimate any data source from the beginning. The more data you can store and process as a company, the better. So I would really recommend companies not to make any preliminary decisions, right? And just try to collect and store and manage all of the data they can. Everything, right? So any contact they have with their customer, whether it's like a customer service call, an email, text messages, of course, very other relevant information as like customers making payment, like, but every contact you have with your customers and information you can collect on them, make sure to store that in a way that would be useful in the future.
Absolutely. Are you aware of any AI failures in risk management and what lessons can be learned from them?
Yeah. We have definitely seen some failures in implementing this technology throughout these years of working with these technologies. I would say that one of the things we have learned is that one of the main reasons of these projects failing is that sometimes companies try to build, let's say, a Ferrari when they haven't even built a paved road for this Ferrari to to work on, right? So again, goes back to what I was saying before, focusing on the end solution before solving the underlying tech infrastructure that you need for these solutions to work. And then the other one, and also related to what we are talking before, it's not putting enough attention to change management. So every tech implementation brings changes to the organization, and people need to understand and adopt them, right? They shouldn't be enforced to adopt technologies just because we want them to do that. They should really embrace these technologies and use them because they are actually seeing the value out of them. And for that, they need to understand what these technologies do, what changes they bring, and how their roles are going to adapt or change within these new technological improvements. So they also don't feel threatened, right, by these technologies. Like maybe, well, they're trying to replace my job or whatever. I just give them the confidence and the long-term vision that these tools come to improve your job, not replace them. I think that's super important. And also a lot of training. We've seen a lot of customers implementing really nice and advanced technological solutions, but then hitting a wall in the sense that the end users don't know how to use them. So we don't get the value right away. So that's also a very important aspect, just training your personnel, and again, just focusing on this concept of change management as a whole.
Definitely. So, as with most really forward-thinking questions, this might be another one that's a little tricky to answer, but how do you see AI evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? Are there any emerging technologies that you believe will revolutionize the equipment finance and particularly the risk
Yeah,
management space?
sure. Great question, but also very difficult one to answer. I think these technologies will evolve super fast. If you ask me 5 years from now, I think the majority of our industry will be to some extent using AI in their processes. And if we take this question to 10 years from now, I think AI will be the norm. So there won't be any more hype around this. Probably there will be less spaces where we're going to be talking about this because it's just going to be the norm, the standard, right? That's how I think it's going to play out. And within this very wide concept of AI, and again, trying to focus this on risk management, the one technology or field within AI that I'm personally more excited about, and I think it's going to bring a lot of great value, it's generative AI, especially in the form of AI assistants. Again, like we were saying, like an example of having your own ChatGPT tailored to your company needs. So just imagine having these multiple assistants that can give you immediate access to information and solve specific needs. So whether that's training and onboarding people, right? Right now, maybe you hire a credit analyst, a collection specialist, anyone, a sales agent, and you can just automate their training by having all of your know-how as a manager within these assistants that can provide support to these people and just facilitate the onboarding and training within their roles. For risk management specifically, let's imagine having an assistant that can support your credit team into assessing the risk of deals, right? You have all the information in place, but on top of that, you have an assistant. You can ask questions, provide comments or analysis onto what you're seeing on the deal, and just be more confident on the decisions you're making. On the customer side, I'm seeing maybe assistants that can help you reach out to customers. There's right now a lot of companies out there working on AI assistants that are more like voice assistants, so not only text as we are right now familiarized to with ChatGPT, but also voice assistants. So imagine you being again a lending institution and you want to remind the customers of their payment due dates, or you want to start doing some initial collection efforts on customers who are late in their payments. So you have limited capabilities and you have to call hundreds, maybe thousands of customers every week. So having these assistants that can automatically call to your customers and make some basic interaction or even like questions, right, will be something super interesting to see. And for high level management, just having your assistant that can allow you to, again, give you immediate access to key metrics, dashboards, graphs. So I'm really excited about this field of generative AI and how this plays out in terms of building this assistant that can add a lot of productivity to any business, but yeah, also to lending companies.
Absolutely. So one of the continued concerns about using AI is that it will begin to replace jobs. What is your response to that concern?
Yeah, that's definitely a concern that have crossed my mind a lot of times. As I was saying at the beginning of this conversation, even in the context of my own role of my own company, and I'm sure it's crossing the mind of everyone who is listening to this podcast. But being so many years working with these technologies and being on the field of AI, I have come to replace these concerns with a more optimistic point of view, where I see these actually as more of opportunities and not so much concerns, because I don't think AI's impact will be much different from other disruptive technologies we have seen in the past. Let's take, for example, Microsoft Excel, right? So it was launched on the 80s. I think it was 1986 or something. And there was a widespread concern around job displacement, especially for accountants, for bookkeepers. They were thinking they're going to be completely replaced by this new technology, because at that moment, a lot of their jobs revolve around manual data entry and manual calculations. And the reality is that Excel became a tool that enhanced productivity. So it didn't replace bookkeeping or accounting. It actually provided them with a really nice productivity tool to make their work better, and also start focusing on less skilled tasks are really manual, and actually transform these roles to more upskill and kind of even a strategic approach to the roles. So I see AI in a similar fashion. I could also comes to mind the example of computers as a whole, right? So when computers were launched, there was a huge concern about unemployment, job displacement. And of course, there was to some extent, right? People who had jobs that were really specific to manual tasks, the computer came and completely automated. Of course, there was job displacements, but at the end, the net outcome was significantly positive, right? There was millions of new jobs created, completely new markets and industries were creating around IT, software, hardware. So at the end, I do believe that these technologies provide, a lot of benefits, and I think it's going to be the same with AI.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, before we wrap up, Patricio, do you have any additional comments or maybe a major takeaway you'd like to leave listeners with?
Yeah. So first, and of course, I might be a bit biased because I have a really positive view on AI, but I really invite people to see this as of course, really impactful technology that is gonna significantly change how they do their jobs. But I don't think it's gonna end up replacing a lot of these roles. It's actually gonna just give us more tools to be more productive and focus on what really matters. And because this conversation revolved around the context of risk management, I again just want to highlight the importance of risk managers being promoters of this technology within these organizations. I think they not only have the opportunity, but the responsibility of promoting these technologies because they are high-level managers. They have a lot of exposure and influence within their companies. And at the end of the day, right, if you don't adopt this technology, you're gonna fall behind. So I think it's better that you do this as soon as possible. So yeah, that would be kind of my final comment, and also take the opportunity to thank you again for having me. I have really enjoyed this conversation, and I really hope this podcast brings value to our listeners. And yeah, again, thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much, Patricio. Like you said, thanks so much for joining me. And I'm sure our listeners got a bunch of takeaways from this podcast. I know I did, even though I'm
Hopefully,
not a
yeah.
credit or risk manager. So thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time.